Welcome to another webinar workshop. I feel like there's like 20 different things that people are calling what we're doing today. Anyways, Paige, how are you? How are things in your neck of the woods?
I'm so good, Chris. Thank you so much for having me. You guys know I love the Show It team. I have a Show It website, if you can believe it. That website is Show It, so it does a whole lot of different things.
Well, yeah, we're huge Legal Page fans, so you've done a lot for our community, and excited to hear what you have to share today.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Things are going super well. I am just rolling with as day-to-day goes by, rolling with the punches. It changes every day. Things are changing rapidly, as everybody knows. So just trying to help out as many people and small business owners as I can during this time. So it's been a busy 3 months, but a good 3 months.
Yeah, I imagine. So what do things look like where you're at? Are things still on lockdown? Are you guys opening up a little bit?
Yeah, so great question. I probably live in one of the best states to live in right now, but you guys don't take that as you're allowed to move here, because you don't want everyone moving here. I actually live in Montana. I was raised here, so my whole family's here, but we are all saying we're very, very blessed to live where we live, because we don't have that many people, and we have a very large state. So basically, we social distance normally.
Right. That's just your lives.
That's just our lives. Everyone recreates outside. The state is opening up. We've been in a phased approach like most states. But we're at like phase 1.5 is what they're calling it. And then phase 2 will happen on June 1st. That came out yesterday, I believe, or the day before. Retail businesses are starting to open up. Obviously, social distancing protocols are still in place, sanitation guidelines. Gyms just opened, which is nice, but it just all looks a little bit different. Nothing's normal, so to speak, but I think Montanans are getting out quite a bit more than other states.
For sure. So help me out with my understanding of Montana, because I'm sure people assume Arizona, like nothing but cactus and desert. When I think of Montana, I think of like everybody has 100 acres of land, and there's like everybody has a horse. So help me with my ignorance when it comes to your state.
Yeah, so most people think we still ride horses to school. That's not really, that's not happening.
Yeah.
I actually live in one of the cities in Montana. We have like 70,000 people, so whatever, all of y'all that think that is an actual city, it's more like a town. And I think we have about like 5 or 6 of those kind of larger, centralized urban cities. And so I don't have 100 acres. That would be really nice. But many people do have lots of acreage in Montana because there's a lot to go around. Urban, rural, I would say it's pretty 50-50 split.
Yeah, nice. That's awesome. So tell me, what's like, I've asked this to everybody that we've had on, what's one of the weirdest things that you've purchased during COVID?
That's a fun question. I've been on a lot of podcasts and no one's asked me that. I don't know if it's weird, but I did purchase a Peloton.
That's awesome.
You guys, that's like really bougie, and I know it is, and it's like weird to say, but I was bored, and I'm like a group fit person. Yeah. I love exercising with other people, so it was like a way to do that.
Yes.
And I did it like very economically for the first couple of months. I rented a bike from like a studio downtown that of course was closed and suffering financially, so they rented out bikes, and then I used like the Peloton app for free for 90 days.
Yes.
And I like makeshifted my Peloton, and then I finally did just like actually get one. That's like the weirdest purchase I've made, but I think we all did random home projects.
Yes.
I bought like lights for my ceiling that I've always wanted to do, and nobody wants to like do that activity. Those are probably the weirdest things. Yeah.
That's awesome. We've got a 1,200 square foot house, and there are 6 people that live here. So
Woo!
we almost, and we're, we do it willingly. We're minimalists. We enjoy a smaller mortgage amount. So, but when we got into lockdown, we were like, okay, we got to do some stuff. So we like renovated the heck out of this place just to be able to, this used to be my laundry room. So my office, there used to be a washer here and a dryer here. And so now this is like my little escape place. But,
yeah, I'm digging your vibes, like the behind the scenes vibes there. I love the coloring. It's very chill and serene.
you know, it's funny because people are like, "You look like a gamer, Chris," and I'm like, "I'm not. I don't even touch games." So it's a little. I think it's a little bit much. But what's funny is that this room wasn't built to have a lot of circulation, so it's incredibly hot, and especially in Arizona when it's like almost 100 degrees right now, and it's like I've got to keep the AC down to like 69 just to feel like I'm not sweating like crazy. So
oh gosh, I cannot believe it's that hot there already. We're still like, I think we're in like maybe the lower 50s, upper 40s today.
Oh wow.
But it's supposed to jump up to like 60s, maybe low 70s here soon, which
Oh
will
my
be nice.
gosh. Yeah. Does that probably doesn't mean the same thing as it does for Arizona, right? Like it's probably like quite a bit colder if it's lower 60s, huh?
Yeah. It's pretty, I mean, it's just that's very basic spring. We have kind of like highs and lows throughout April and May. And then June, it starts getting nicer and you'll see like 70s, which is hot for Montana.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, hey, if you're just tuning in, we're so glad that you are with us today. Would love to hear where you're tuning in from, where you are in the world, how you're doing. And just want to let you know we're going to be going through quite a bit of info today, but we're also going to have a good amount of time just to do some feedback, some questions and some answers. I will be facilitating the questions. I will not be answering anything because if I gave you any legal advice, you would probably sue me as a result because it would be not good. So glad to have you. Just a couple of things to chat about as we get started. Number one, we love the internet, but sometimes it does not work in our favor. So we might cut out, things might go rogue a little bit. If that happens, we will this is being recorded, so we will take what we get and we will put it up for you to find. And we will also link all the resources that Paige references in the episode notes. And we will also have a replay page that we will send out to you as well if you signed up for the webinar. So also realize, this experience is going to be different for everybody. So some people might have better or worse internet. So if it gets laggy for you, try refreshing, try going down on the quality of the video that you're getting on YouTube. That's the great thing about YouTube is that you have the option to do that. And please forgive if you hear any barking dogs or any, like I've got 6 children that are just running around here. 4 children, 4 plus 2 is 6. So yeah, sometimes it feels like 6.
We all forget during Corona.
Right, exactly. It's like, what day is it? How many kids do I have? What am I doing? It's all up in the air. So Paige is a lawyer that runs thelegalpage.com, and it's Paige, Paige. That's her name. Play on words, very great. And she is going to be talking about all things legality and COVID related stuff. So all the questions that you've had about what do contracts look like in this new season? What do cancellations look like in this new season? What kind of rights and authority do I have if somebody cancels on me because of, let's say we have another lockdown? And so, a lot of really good practical stuff that I think are on the hearts and the minds of a lot of small business owners, that creative entrepreneurs, photographers. So Paige, I'm really excited to hear what you have to offer. And I wonder if you can just kind of set the table for us before we dive into some deep questions.
Yeah, thank you again so much for having me. You guys know I love Show It. Like, my heart is so full for Show It. They are wonderful, wonderful humans. So when Chris asked me to do this webinar, I was a resounding yes. The lay of the landscape is different. I think that is the best way to start out this webinar, is if you guys kind of just take a moment and go back to like March 15th-ish. what we were dealing with as mainly service providers, for all of you probably listening in today, small business owners for that matter, whether you are service providers, sell tangible goods, it was looking a lot different on March 15th. You know, there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of unknowns, like what's happening, states were shutting down. People were trying to figure out what that meant for their business. And then we had a lot of clients that were also fear-based and very like, we don't know what's going to happen. We must change everything, change all the plans. Now, state, 2 months later, well, 2 months and 6 days. So we're on May 21st, and now we're at this point where 48 states will be reopened by this weekend.
Wow.
And at least partially reopened. Most states are going on a phased approach pursuant to the CDC and White House guidelines, but the states make their own rules. That's the beauty of our country. Beautiful. It's caused a lot of issues because a lot of us work in all kinds of different areas too. The lay of the land right now is we are all kind of in the same position, but at least it's a little bit better where we are able to get back to work. It's just going to look a little bit different than what our normal work was, say, in summer 2019. And so we all just need to practice the best guidelines possible to get back to work and ensure we're doing it not only safely, but legally as well. But being, amazing service providers and providing that customer service to your clients that you had been doing for the previous, months and years.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. What do creative business owners, photographers need to consider when it comes to safety and state regulations so that they make sure that they're covered from any type of legal issues when it comes to the work that they're doing?
Yeah, so first and foremost, you guys, we are considered more or less a retail business or a service-based business. So most phase openings in various states will allow retail businesses to open in phase 1. But of course, you just need to follow all of the guidelines that your state puts out. So I'm sure many of you are already probably duly following what your state is doing each and every day. So you want to start step 1, check with your state protocols, their guidelines, their recommendations, and oftentimes they are like very, very specific protocols in place. And so you want to check with your state. But again, it trickles down from that to your local county. So your county can kind of supersede some of those guidelines. They can implement even more restrictive measures on how you're reopening as a retail business. For photographers, more or less, you guys, we have an easier, and just so you guys know, I'm a photographer as well. So I have been kind of looking at how I'm going to work with clients in the next month or two. We have a little bit easier ability to stay 6 feet apart for that, physical distancing guidelines that are pretty much the same across the board for every state. We can use longer lenses. We can ensure that we're not like touching our clients like we used to. We're not going to be able to like move the hair. We're going to have to tell our clients to move the hair. So it's going to look a little bit differently. But photographers are going back to work right now, especially outside, like natural light type of photography scenarios. Inside is more or less, people that have studios that are doing more lifestyle sessions, maybe newborn family sessions, those type of things. Those you want to make sure that you're following exactly what brick and mortar retail businesses are doing in your county. That's really key here. And if you have any questions, I have seen lots of great resources coming from local county health departments because the counties, they're getting inundated with phone calls. They might have hotlines. That would be something to look up. You can just Google search your county, and they should have like COVID resource tabs on their website and give you access to things. But for the most part, photographers are able to work, which is great. The only caveat to this right now is I think in the next 2 to 4 weeks, things are going to change quite drastically with the maximum amount of people who can be gathered together. So while I say we can go back to work for like smaller portrait sessions, weddings are kind of a different story.
Yeah. So talk about that. Would a photographer be liable if, let's say a wedding had a bigger gathering than what was recommended by the state, and they were hired to work at that, or would it come under the liability of the people who are running the event?
Yeah, so there's no straight answer to that, I will say. And I wish I could give you guys all a blanket answer, but it varies across the board because some states have implemented just like guidelines and recommendations, and some counties haven't made those like an ordinance or a misdemeanor or a civil violation, but some states and counties have. So again, that's where I say, like, if you're really concerned about, say, this is popping up all the time in the legal page community on Facebook. People are asking, okay, my June 6th wedding. I don't know. I just made up a date. That's probably in the middle of the week. It's okay, you guys. Just bear with me here. So that wedding, that couple is still going to have, say, they haven't reduced their numbers. They still have invites out to 150 guests. Your state doesn't allow that. Maybe your state's still at 10 people maximum that can be gathered together at a place of assembly. That's something that you need to check with your county on. Like, can you move forward? Who is liable? Can you, as a vendor, get in trouble? I would say if they aren't being considerate of what the state recommendations and guidelines are, even though they are state recommendations or guidelines, I think people aren't realizing that it's the county who enforces that. It's not the state. So just make sure you guys are checking with your county on, could I get my business license taken away if I am a part of this vendor team at the wedding? I would say, it's hard to give a blanket answer, but you just want to be cautious of it because nobody knows that
Right.
There hasn't been a wedding yet where a bunch of vendors have gotten, violations and fines for gathering people together. I think venues are kind of the most at risk right now versus photographers, videographers, wedding planners. I think venues are the ones that are going to really have to follow suit the best because you guys, they have the biggest insurance policy. So
Right.
that is, and they have a brick and mortar, they actually have a physical place, and those are designated places of assembly. So they technically can't even have more than 10 people at their location in many different states. Sometimes it's 25, sometimes it's 50. I don't know. Well, I think Alabama has opened up everything. It's very strange. But there's some states, like I said, you just have to go with where you're at. Most states are around 10, 25, 50 people. And so venues are kind of the ones that are driving that. And hopefully you can work with the venue, work with the vendor team, and everyone's on the same page there.
That's great. So tell us how, obviously we've got Google to figure out, what the county is saying that we should or shouldn't do. But where would you encourage people to go to look to find this information?
Yeah, definitely just wherever your home county is, that the location or event is occurring. So just because you're working in X county, maybe you're traveling over to another county where the event would be held, that's the county that would enforce said recommendations or guidelines.
Got it.
If they enforce them at all. I would say that no, you have a very low risk of being liable. Honestly, if you are following all of the necessary guidelines, if you're trying to, wear a mask while you provide service, if you are sanitizing often, you have some nice hand sanitizer on you at all times. If you're trying to stay far enough away, I wouldn't suggest getting in the middle of the dance floor. I would suggest, really talking with your couples on what family photos are going to look like, what wedding party photos are going to look like. That's been a big one for people, and just ask your county, call in, because state hotlines are inundated. But if you call your county where it's going to be, those aren't as busy, and you should be able to get some clear answers. And that's the name of the game here, Chris. If you are doing your due diligence and you're getting answers on what you can and cannot do versus you guys don't take for word what people are saying in Facebook groups, because where they're at and their circumstances are totally different than you, and don't take for word what your couples are saying, because they have a lot of emotional turmoil going on. They've probably already had to change things. They're probably already, stressed out enough as it is. all of their family stressed out. And so they may just be wanting to have their event, but you have your business license on the line, and you also have your reputation on the line. I think as photographers, we need to remember we are the ones documenting all of this. So we're documenting technically that people aren't social distancing. And that is something we all need to, take a good look in the mirror. Like, what do you want to do as a photographer? What are you comfortable with doing? How do you want to be seen 6 months from now on how you worked with all of your clients during this season?
Yeah, wow, that's great advice. And really, it just sounds like just be intentional.
Totally.
Do your work. Don't operate out of fear, but at the same time, don't be ignorant to what is going on in the world right now. So that's fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about contracts. I think this last season has taught us a lot about the nature of what we want our contracts to look like and why, because more than ever, people probably have more than any cancellations that they've ever had in the life of their business. So talk a little bit about that. How can we strengthen our contracts, but at the same time, make sure that we're considering that, the people that are hiring us are also taking a big risk in contracting us as well?
So yeah, this is twofold, you guys. Let's first talk about, okay, we all have laser beam focus on our contracts right now. You all have heard me say this over the past few months. A lot of us contract attorneys are like, we've been talking about this for a while. Like, they are really important. And you guys knew they were important. You had them, right? You had your clients sign them in case of a what if situation. Well, then the whole world went into the what if situation at the same time. And the key here is, what does your contract say? So going back to working with clients on your contract, and then we're going to talk about updating your contract. You can't change your existing contract language right now. You and your clients have signed on to whatever that document is in the four corners of that agreement. So whatever your, cancellation and rescheduling policies were under that contract, whatever your active God or force majeure clause stated, and whatever, kind of like canceling as the service provider, sometimes that's happening if people just aren't comfortable providing services. You are under all of your existing contract language. It's obviously very challenging to update an existing contract right now if you're dealing with a COVID postponement or cancellation. So that's kind of the way of what we were doing for the past 2 months. Now, I will say that, I've been talking about force majeure like crazy. I'm sure you guys are all like, Paige, stop talking about this weird, crazy word. 2 words. So force majeure technically isn't happening anymore. It's depending on what your force majeure clause states, because I've read thousands and thousands of different clauses at this point from various people, and they all say something different. And nobody knew, you guys. It's okay. Everyone take a deep breath, because it's okay that you didn't know. And maybe you should have had something a little more concrete, but how were we all supposed to predict what was going on with a global pandemic? A force majeure clause 6 months ago was put into your contract to avoid hurricanes and tornadoes and those type of situations, not necessarily a global pandemic. But a lot of people have, a force majeure clause. A lot of people have interpreted it to mean that you can't host the event, which is true because states were shut down. So government orders were in place. And the key phrasing here in legal speak is it unpredictable, unforeseeable, and impossible to perform your services? Yes, for the past couple of months, it was. Nobody predicted this. No, both parties, when they signed the contract, couldn't foresee this occurring. And then it was impossible because everything was shut down. Nobody could move. Everybody was staying at home. And now, though, people are opening, you are able to work. You are able to travel. You're supposed, a lot of the mandatory quarantines are getting cut down. So while it may be more difficult, that's the big thing to convey to your clients. While it may be more difficult to have them host the event, and it might be a little bit out of the norm, like we talked about at the beginning, for you to perform your services as a photographer, say, it's not impossible. for you to perform. And so it just might look a little bit different, and everyone's going to have to, modify or mitigate circumstances. So force majeure doesn't really apply. And I think that is the general consensus across the legal world is, and probably in the future as well. A lot of you are like, well, what if a government shutdown happens again? What if there's a second wave? Nobody knows what the future holds, but pretty much the entire world now, it's foreseeable. Corona is a known cause. So force majeure doesn't really apply. And that will impact how you are doing postponements and cancellations in the future. Because what that means is your clients can't now cry, force majeure, act of God, the whole contract is void or terminate. I mean, that's what they're saying. But technically that's really not what happens. And you guys know I've been talking about this quite a bit. Where then honestly your cancellation rescheduling policies come into play, because that's them canceling out of fear is still canceling on their own volition. Them wanting to postpone or reschedule is them postponing and rescheduling on their own volition, which would be pursuant to those clauses in your contract. However, Chris, the main thing here again is what kind of service provider do you want to be? Probably knock down that rescheduling fee and work with them. Move it to 2021 if they will allow you to do so. I am a huge proponent of avoiding cancellations at all costs. We have non-refundable retainers in our contracts for a reason. They signed on to that. So just because it may be more difficult for them to host their event, they might need to look at, okay, maybe we do a smaller elopement now with just our closest friends and family, and then we split coverage that we had under the existing contract so that we don't lose our non-refundable retainer or forfeit that. Because I bet most of you, if you're looking at your contracts right now, them canceling equals them forfeiting the retainer.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point, because, you have the legal component, but then you have the relational component. And,
yes.
I think that's very important to consider. So what would you say to people who are kind of struggling with that tension of okay, I need to get paid. You signed a contract, but I understand where you're coming from because you're freaked out of your mind right now.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you just have to do what your business morals and ethics are. And I will caution everyone that people saying things in certain Facebook groups, I think a lot of you are in them right now. That's usually the forums that people are talking about this in. Them saying you have to give refunds, you have to do this, you have to do that. That's not true, you guys. They don't live in your state. They don't know what your contract says. They don't know what your client's situation is, and they don't know your interaction with your clients from the get-go. I have seen, Chris, a really interesting correlation between if you have been a top tier customer service provider and you have a really good relational, back and forth with your clients from the get-go, that has turned into a higher correlation between them wanting to work with you and postponing and rescheduling, and people who have kind of just hired you and then you haven't talked to them and you haven't done anything with them, and now they usually probably just want a full refund and they want to cancel. And so it's you working with them. The name of the game for the past 2 months has been find a mutual agreement with your clients versus getting into some legal dispute about if it is an actual non-refundable retainer.
Yeah, that's great. And we've got some questions coming in. I want to encourage you, if you've got questions, go ahead and post those in the comments, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Can't guarantee you that we'll get to all of them, but sure do hope to. So I wonder, as we're just kind of waiting for questions to come in, Paige, in my mind, because I'm not a photographer, what does this step-by-step process, let's say all of a sudden I became a photographer and got a client and they canceled. So what would that back and forth look like practically? Even to the most negative degree, what if they're I'm not paying you anything, I'm canceling, you can't take my money, walk us through that.
Mm-hmm. So everyone's still under the existing contract until it's canceled. That's the most important thing for people to know is I think clients just assume they can write an email and that it's canceled and the whole thing is terminated. But until you officially legally document that contract is completely canceled, void, terminated, and what are the parties' respective obligations in terms of that cancellation. Lots of clients don't understand that they are still on the hook for all of those other payments under the contract until they come to some mutual resolution with you. They usually just come at you. Hopefully, they're trying to work with you on, okay, this is happening. Obviously, we can't host our event as planned. What are my options here? In that respect, you want to talk with them about postponement, that you won't charge a rescheduling fee, that you are willing to work with them. You guys make sure you're trying to cure performance. I know many of you, if you have heard me talk throughout the past couple of months, cure performance is a legal term, which means you're trying to obviously perform your services, but maybe in a different manner than when it was originally, signed onto under the contract. You can still do it. It just might look a little bit differently, like I was saying. So you can say, I'm willing to split coverage. Here's what the guidelines are in our, state. If you can get here, maybe we do a smaller one, we split coverage, maybe we move it till 2021. I'm not going to charge you a rescheduling fee. This is, you just customer service time and time again. And you're going to work with them on postponing. We have a really good blog post on this that's probably been viewed. It's been viewed. We put it up in March and people have been following. It's kind of like a step-by-step process to postponements and cancellations. You want to try to avoid the cancellation termination conversation until like 5+ emails or communications down the line, because you want to show that you are sticking as a business, as a business owner to your contract. You don't just want to completely waive all these provisions in the contract. You want to tell them this is what our contract says. This is how I'm willing to work with you on this. It is a non-refundable retainer. Try to stick by that because you don't want to say, oh yeah, refunds for everyone. Then your business goes out. You just can't do that. It's not sustainable and it's not going to ensure that you're a viable business come 6 months from now.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, going back to what you said, going back to are you nurturing those relationships of your clients before all of this happened, because hopefully you would never have to pull out any legal ammo, to be able to force what's happening, but it would be just a relationship that's back and forth. So
and the one thing I will say is I think everyone's at a certain point, you do have to make a decision, sure. Right? You could have extremely difficult clients, and I have seen those more now than ever. But that is based out of them. You have no idea what they're going through. You have no idea what they're thinking. You have no idea who they've talked to. Some of them have random attorney friends in random various areas. They're probably not even contract attorneys. Maybe they're just in law school, and that's fine. And they're getting advice too, just like you're probably seeking advice from this webinar. But if that point occurs where they are just holding their ground, they want some type of refund, they want to cancel services with you, their arms are up, they're not willing to work with you, then I will say, there's a lot of law out there that is saying, you can't really keep funds that you haven't provided services for. Yeah. So it depends on your state contract law, I will say. Some states are a little bit more, business sided, and some states are more consumer sided. And so you have to probably check with an attorney in your state and see what would be the best approach. But you also have to decide, okay, am I willing to move forward with what my contract says and have some risk involved there and liability involved there, and then potentially coming back later with a dispute or a lawsuit, God forbid. Or are you willing to kind of massage that refund situation? Maybe you give back a little. It's not a win-win for both. It's kind of a lose-lose for both, but you can come to an agreement where they sign a cancellation contract and then you both part ways, but at least it's done and it's not a headache anymore.
Right, for sure. So we've got a good question from Chelsea, and she says, I'm going to throw it up here. What are some examples of things that you can add into our contracts concerning COVID?
Yes. Okay, so this was kind of part of Chris's question at the beginning, but I kind of went a different way with it. So, what about contracts? So there's contracts moving forward, there's existing contracts, and then there's updating contracts. So if you want to update your contract with like a COVID-19 clause is what we're calling it, that would be more or less a pressure release valve for your clients for COVID-19 purposes only. And it really would walk you through and your clients through what your policies are for rescheduling in the event of, okay, they want to book you for next spring or maybe even this fall, and they're concerned about a potential second wave. If that's the case, you might want to add in a clause like this. And it would talk about them having to be able to reschedule for COVID purposes only one time. They have to work with you in finding a mutually agreeable date. This has been a big one because clients are just like rescheduling to a date. They're not talking with all of their vendors. And then they just expect a refund if you can't make it. And that's not how it goes, you guys. So if that's what your clients are saying, that's not how it goes. It's like this situation is a two-way street. They have to work with you and you have to work with them. You want to make sure you're giving people during rescheduling situations like more than just one date. Don't just say this is the only date I'm available. Give them 10, 20 dates to show that you're willing to work with them and perform at some point in the future. You just can't do so now. But a COVID-19 clause is something that you can add in. We do have it on our website. If you just go to the homepage and you scroll down, you'll see the COVID-19 clause. And that would be something you'd amend or add into your contract, existing contracts. And then, Chris, I will just talk about what you need to do updating contracts. I'll just do that very quickly. But remember, you guys, if you want to add in a contract, you're going to need to use some type of contract addendum. And it would have language, and many of you may have our rescheduling and cancellation bundle that includes a contract addendum, rescheduling contract, and cancellation contract. You can use that template contract addendum and you can just add in clauses. So that's a really good, resource to have in your legal toolkit moving forward here for the next year or so, is you may need to change things in your contract just to work with your clients. Maybe they want to change things. It's an ever evolving document right now, basically, is you want to agree with your clients on what that, relationship is going to look like moving forward, because it's very different than when you signed on to it, like I talked about. So you can just sign an addendum and it would just say like the remaining, the previous contract remains in in effect, but we're adding in these two clauses. Or we're changing the service date to this, and then we're adding in a COVID-19 clause. And here's what that looks like. So that is how you would approach kind of adding in a COVID clause. Other clauses you want to consider, and you guys, we have, if you go to bit.ly/protection clause checklist, and Chris will make sure to put this up for you. This is kind of the best freebie we have right now. We created it in March and it has been downloaded quite a bit of times, because what I want you to do is put on your chief legal officer hat. We all wear all the hats as solo business owners. And you need to walk through your contract right now. We are all seeing these holes in our contracts. I know they're there. I haven't seen one person with like a perfect contract because we weren't prepared for all of this. So go through and check the following clauses. I'm not going to go into them because that would take a lot of time. But this free checklist gives you guys a little bit more information about what each of those clauses are. And I want you to take your existing contract and your other contract in this checklist and make sure that you have all these clauses in your contract. If not, you probably need to update your contract. And this is how you are going to book new clients with this updated contract. So make sure your cancellation clause is on lockdown and your rescheduling clause is on lockdown. And that's for clients canceling on their own volition or rescheduling on their own volition. Inclement weather clause, that's like important just for various protection purposes for your equipment and for working with clients. A safe working environment clause. Many of you didn't have this, and this would allow you to discontinue service if your clients ask you to do something illegal or to go into an area where it's still quarantined or there's a communicable disease. A lot of us didn't have this, and it was a way for us as service providers to say no. no, like, we're not going to do something that's in violation of a government directive right now.
Right.
A client's responsibility to secure insurance. Lots of clients weren't aware that that's what insurance is for all of these non-refundable retainers. They shouldn't be asking you for this. They should have gotten insurance coverage to begin with. We don't need to go down the line of whether insurance policies cover this, but that is what they need to do. Just like we need to get business insurance for our, unforeseeable situations and negligence purposes. An indemnification clause, that's really important, especially moving forward, that your clients will indemnify you or, of course, not hold you liable for injury, illness, damage to property of third parties. So like their guests, right? They can't, they would kind of be the middle person in between the guests getting injured or ill at the event versus you as the vendor. A limitation of liability clause, that's important to have for maximum damages, is just what the contract, the amount of the contract, and that they can't sue for like emotional damages. I mean, kind of true right now. They might be able to. And a force majeure clause, please update your force majeure clause. And we have a free one, you guys, HoneyBook. If you go, even if you're not a HoneyBook user, they have a blog post that has a free force majeure clause. That's kind of for various different service providers. Just make sure you add at the end of your force majeure clause, and we have these in our shop, but make sure you add in language regarding what's happening with money. That no force majeure clause had anything to do with transferability of retainers, how long that would be in effect if a force majeure event happened. And then the final one is cancellation of services by you as the company. Be careful that your contract doesn't have language surrounding you failing to perform services, because a lot of clients have hooked onto that clause and said, well, you can't perform or you're not willing to perform, so I get a full refund. Versus you also should be able to cancel the contract on your own volition, just like the clients can as well, and what your procedure is for this. So that would be kind of very different than a coronavirus force majeure situation. So those clauses, you guys, make sure you have those in updated contracts when you're booking new clients. Make sure you know what those clauses mean. Remember, knowledge is power here. So if you fully understand your contract and can really communicate to your clients what your contract means, that's going to help you book clients moving forward. To have a really solid contract, that's a two-sided contract where your clients have rights and obligations and you do too, and then maybe stick that COVID-19 clause in for certain clients that really want to know, okay, what are your, do you have any carve-out policies for COVID-19 reschedulings?
Yeah, that's great. We've got another great question from Veronica. What happens when the client wants to take you to court because you don't pay back the retainer fee? What does that process look like?
Yeah. Oh, this is a really good question, you guys, because I wish I could just put all of my juju onto you in terms of please don't be afraid of this. Because your clients, I think, are trying to make you afraid at the beginning so that you do just give it back. And there's a contract. If there's a contract in place that has it depends. It depends what your contract says. Hopefully there's not any language in there surrounding you giving a full refund. If that's the case, you're probably stuck with your contract language. But if your contract is pretty solid in terms of non-refundable retainer, non-refundable retainer, non-refundable retainer, and you can show through multiple email documentations that you have tried to work with your client to provide services in the future in some way, shape, or form, or credit on their account, or whatever it looks like, then the one thing people need to know is clients can sue you, okay? They can sue you, but please don't equate that to them winning. Just because they can take legal action, and it's probably going to be in small claims court, and it's probably not even going to be that big of a deal, you can totally represent yourself. If you come armed with all of these emails printed out, everything you've tried to do to cure performance, and your contract that they signed, that they knew that it was a non-refundable retainer, chances are you can actually probably win. And so don't be afraid of that. If you are afraid of litigation, I totally understand that. Again, Chris, this is probably one of those situations where you also have to decide what you want to do as a business owner. Okay, what is it worth it to you? Is it worth that emotional time and energy to go through a lawsuit for a $1,200 retainer or deposit? Probably not, right? Like, probably try to work with them, figure out a mutual refund situation, and move forward. You can probably book another client here in the next couple of months if you don't have that emotional baggage in your brain.
Yeah.
But they can sue you. That is a possibility, but suing you does not equate to them actually winning. That means two people have two different arguments, and the small claims court judge would decide that.
Right.
Yep. That's what it would look like. And then, yeah, I could, there's a lot of different scenarios there too. But I think that clients are I've seen a lot of threatening language from pushy clients, and I think that's what we're all afraid of. And we want to really go above and beyond. And that probably isn't a good client to work with, honestly. Like, if they're already being like that, why would you want to service them in the future or provide photograph them? It's probably the relationship is already damaged enough.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's a really scary thing if you've never been sued to have a lawsuit against you. But
yeah,
anybody can sue anybody for anything, right? Am I wrong in thinking that? And so it could be totally baseless. And I think
yes,
just getting a little bit of information about like where your court is, how to access that information will kind of, just a little bit of knowledge will help you not be as fearful when somebody says, I'm going to sue you.
Yeah, and honestly, it's just two very different philosophies as business owners. And you guys, I will say, like, take a deep breath, because there is no right or wrong way to handle these situations. Some business owners are a little bit more steadfast. They feel good about their contracts, and they are willing to take that risk and liability on of a potential lawsuit. If you're not one of them, and like Chris is saying, it's terrifying, you don't even want to get there, you're not willing to take that risk, and you just need to move forward, then you guys need to come to a mutual resolution with your clients so that you avoid all of that.
Yeah, that's great. So another question I've got is, and we've got time for maybe a couple more. What if the client prepaid the wedding in full voluntary? My contract doesn't have a clause about weddings paid in full months in advance.
Yeah, okay. I've had this come up a couple of times. So retainers are there in place. Whatever your contract says regarding what portion of that full payment would be the retainer, you can never have like the full amount of services as a retainer. That's just not how it works. That's not the definition of a retainer. And you guys know I'm using the word retainer a lot. So if you have the word deposit in your contracts, please change that. If you learn anything from this webinar, change it. Deposits means probably refundable if you don't perform services. Retainer is retainment of services for a certain date, and you've crossed that date off on your calendar. So look to your contract language on what portion of that full fee is the actual retainer. Hopefully you also have language regarding non-refundable retainer. Again, make sure you have that language in your contract moving forward. So if they have paid in full, and say, if they're postponing, you can just transfer as credit all of that full payments over. Maybe you don't upcharge them for 2021 pricing, and you don't charge a rescheduling fee. That's worked really, really well for photographers, and they can just put you on a date. Maybe you upcharge for a prime Saturday date in 2021. I get that. I totally respect that, but maybe you can work with them. But if you're fully canceling, I will say that general consensus for state contract laws across the U.S., and I don't know where this person is, Chris, I don't know what state law would come into play, but you probably, if they are completely terminating the contract, it's going to be really hard for you to keep above what that non-refundable retainer is. So probably very challenging for you to keep 50% or more of that full payment. And you're probably in an unfortunate cancellation situation, you would probably have to refund at least 50%, if not more, depending on what you and your clients decide upon.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so Molly asks, the bride signed my contract, but the groom paid. And so the credit card company ruled in favor of them for a chargeback.
Yeah.
So what kind of language could she add to prevent that from happening again?
Yeah, great. Okay, so first of all, I would chargebacks are like, oh my gosh, you guys, I could get on a roll right now with chargebacks. It is a super unfortunate thing right now because there are silly bride and groom forums or couple forums, bride, groom, totally fine. Whatever, they are all talking about chargebacks right now. Like people are saying, do this to get all your money back. Fight them, you guys, please fight the chargeback because they signed a contract. And technically, if they do a chargeback, it's a breach of contract. And I have heard people have successfully won these chargeback disputes. I know it's a little bit of work on your behalf, but why would you want that to just be like your general practice to allow a chargeback? And what if other clients follow suit? And then you're out $10,000, $20,000. Try to fight the chargeback if at all possible. But this specific situation, okay, moving forward, please have both people in the couple sign the contract at the bottom. You always want to have both spouses sign because you're servicing both spouses regardless of who pays. This particular situation seems a little bit stickier because it sounds like, the groom filed the chargeback, but are they still contracted? And the bride's the one so the bride is technically in breach of contract because she, breached all of your payment terms technically. But moving forward, both clients should sign. And then if you ever have like a third party paying, like mom, dad, Aunt Sally, you want to sign what's called a third party payor addendum. And you guys, we have a really good podcast episode on this on the Legal Page podcast. So if you are like, okay, I need 3 people signing this contract? Like they're telling me so-and-so is using their credit card to pay, but your 2 spouses are your clients, okay? Payment is totally separate. So you're going to need a third party payor addendum for that. And you can just listen to that episode to get more information.
Yeah, and I just put that in the comments below. So if you're wondering where to go for that, it should be right down there. Okay, so one more question, and we're going to pivot away from COVID just a little bit because Cheryl has been asking and hoping that we will get to this. But it looks like she had... Can a business name be copied in terms of if my brand name is coffee related and my competitor's name is wine related? Someone claimed my business name was a parody and I copied another business. So could you speak to that, Paige?
Oh gosh. Okay. I feel like I need a little bit more information on this. But the main thing is lots of people have very similar business names. So just because they're saying that you copied them may or may not be true. There are some common law rights to trade names and business names, but it depends on kind of who used it first. There's lots of different legal factors, you guys, regarding if it is confusing to the consumer on whose business is whose. If it isn't, confusing, I think you're probably fine if you guys operate in kind of different locations or you have different services that you're offering. The main thing you guys want to avoid is infringing on anybody's trademark, registered actual trademark. So check with your state first. Go to your state Secretary of State's website, or sometimes it's another department of your state, but just Google that. Google like business name search. And from your state, enter X state in the Google search, and then try to search and see if anyone has a similar name to you, and then when that they registered that business name. Because if they were first, you may want, and yours is so similar, you may want to avoid that. And then federal trademarks, of course, apply across all states in the United States. And if someone has even trademarked like a part of your name, say like a clause, or you have like a trendy saying that even like a big corporation trademarked, you want to refrain from that as well.
Yeah, that's great. Paige, thank you so much for being on the workshop with us today. Can you just tell people where to find you and how to connect with you online?
Yes, you guys, thank you so much. I know this was a lot of information, but if you want to continue the conversation on, I have the legal page community. Just type that into the top of Facebook, and it's a private group for small business owners, so we can continue the conversation on. That is where me and my legal team are at most right now, because if you ask questions in a general forum, we can answer them a little bit more easily. You can also find me on thelegalpage.com, and I'm the legal page on Instagram and pretty much every social media platform you will find.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you're also doing a discount for everybody that is on the webinar with us today.
Yes, you guys, if you need the COVID-19 clause, if you need that rescheduling and cancellation bundle that has those 3 contracts in it, if you want to just up your game and completely update your contract right now, what have you, please use the code SHOWIT10 and you'll get 10% off of your total purchase. And I know that a lot of us don't have expendable income right now, and it's, finances are hard. So I want to make sure that you guys use a discount, if anything.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for that. I want to thank you all for being on the webinar with us today. There will be a replay of this. It'll be live right at this YouTube link. And then we're also going to send out a replay page that will have all of the resources and everything else that Paige has mentioned. Also wanted to say we are going to go live again next week on another webinar. We have got Chip Dizard with us, and Paige, you know Chip.
I love Chip.
He's a lot of fun. We're going to talk about live streaming weddings, which I think a lot of people are going to be doing in this next season. So you want to stay tuned to that. Go to showit.co and sign up for more information. But again, Paige, can't thank you enough, and really appreciate you being on.
Yes, thank you so much, Chris. Thanks for everyone for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye-bye.